Ana Homayoun, welcome back to So Money.
It's always great to be here.
You have released the paperback version of your most recent book, Erase the Finish Line. Has a new title, new
Yes.
cover. Tell us about
hmm
this refresh.
Well, I'm super excited about it. So, when we went to do the paperback, we realized that so much had changed around the workforce and AI, and actually makes all of the work in the book all the more relevant, right?
Yeah.
So, I redid the intro and made it very focused on AI and the workforce and what do parents really need to understand today to support their kid, young adult as they navigate these new spaces. And then, these stories, I went back and I interviewed my students from 15 to 20 years ago and told their stories of what really helped them navigate a post graduation world. So it's really exciting for me. This year marks 25 years of Green Ivy Educational Consulting,
Wow.
which I'm really proud of. And I'm proud that I really actually enjoy my work and it is so rewarding. Just yesterday, I was doing an organizational workshop with an incoming high school freshman. She was so delightful and I was doing all the things and we just had a real connection and she was seeing it and I was like, yeah, this is why I do my work. So
Yeah.
I still meet with students and it's why the work is so just rewarding and seeing the impact is lovely. And now in the age of all this technological change, because remember when I started, there was no Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, all the things never existed, X. So there's been a lot of change over the years.
So much. And even in just the last year, you could
Yeah,
say, right? So
totally.
just to refresh everybody on the premise of getting in is not enough, which used to be called, or the hardcover is called Erasing the Finish Line. This
Yeah.
idea that we, as families, as households, we kind of usher the young student to college with the notion
hmm
of just get good scores, get good grades, work for the transcript.
hmm
College is very competitive, but then kids you found got to college and lacked a lot of the more important skills that got them to class, got them finishing the semester, and got them feeling good about their lives in college, which is very complex, right? The
Right.
ups, the downs, the failures, the wins. And so kind of tell us about what it was that you felt was missing from that path to college where now we're saying, just getting in, congratulations, but getting in is not enough.
Right. Well, here's the thing, right? We have so many students, and my office is located in Silicon Valley. You live in Montclair, New Jersey. These are places where people talk about college admissions a lot. I was just
Yeah.
walking my dog, and these two moms were walking by, and she was like, "This school is a good school, and that school is a good school." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I totally understand that it becomes this whole conversation that is all enveloping." And what gets lost in this conversation, though, and that what happens, and I've been working with students now for 25 years on executive functioning skills,
Hmm.
is what are those underlying skills that all people need to thrive, not just in college, but beyond? And the book's premise came out because one of my former students' parents emailed me. He was in his late 20s. He was in my first book. That crumpled paper was due last week. And she said he's really thriving in the workforce. And so much of it is based on things he learned in your office. That's what he's telling me. So I was really curious. And what we know is that there's such this focus on grades, test scores, and college admission that
Yeah.
we lose sight of the how do you build systems that work for you so you can organize, plan, prioritize, and get things done, right? And be
Hmm.
adaptable when things don't go as planned. That adaptability is actually really key. How do you connect with others across differences? How do you, and this is great for people who are older, and in our middle age or our later years, how do you adapt when things change? There are so many people that are my age that are now realizing that the career that they started in either doesn't exist or doesn't exist in the way that it did when they first started their career, and there needs to be a new pathway for them. And so how they react to that is really important also for modeling for their kids. Right.
Hmm.
And the craziest thing is I've been thinking about this a lot now that I am of that age, because my own parents did a really good job when they were in their early 50s of navigating change. And I didn't even realize it at the time. Like I kind of realized it, but they were so good at it. And they're still like, they're in their mid 70s. I've talked about them before. They're busy. They have hobbies. They're learning new things. They're curious. So this idea of getting in is not enough, is actually not just about, how do you help your child, but also how do you help yourself
Yeah.
as you're navigating this next stage, which oftentimes in the same time as your child's going through puberty. It's hard.
Yes. Oh my gosh, is it hard? And so let's make that bridge and talk,
Sure.
because most of my audience, I mean, we may have kids in this cohort, but a lot
Yeah.
of us are also curious to learn how we too
Sure.
can create the framework so that
Mm.
we can get in to whatever next level step experience we want to have, especially as
Right.
midlifers with so much on our
Mhm.
plates. You talk about systems, you talk about connections, perspective, and acceptance. These are like kind of the
Mhm.
four pillars that you write
Mhm.
about in the book, very applicable to the young student demographic
Mhm.
going into college and graduating from college, but especially anyone who's kind of in a transition phase and looking
Yeah.
to kind of level up or change. So let's start with the
Mhm.
systems. This is
Mhm.
like where the executive functioning, organization,
Mhm.
mastering comes in, right?
Right. You want systems based on executive functioning skills that work for you. So,
Yeah.
what I like to say is everybody has to have a system that they can return to, that they can get back on track with. And so, whether that requires you to get outside help is okay, right? Like, so whether you work with an organizer or there's just somebody that helps figure out what works for you in terms of organizing your life, planning, prioritizing, and getting things done, and also adapting when things don't go as planned. And why this is so important as we get older is that actually, when we're younger, we're building our executive functions, but as we get to middle age, we're trying to hold on to them. So that also includes our cognitive flexibility, our ability to be flexible when like something doesn't go as planned. So think of if you're traveling and you get delayed or plans change, like how do you react? How much time and energy does that take, right? Think about your emotional regulation
Yeah.
when, your day goes upside down. How much time and energy does that take for you to get back on track? So this idea of having systems also allows us to be re-regulate ourselves emotionally so that we can move forward, right? So that we don't get super bogged down in any one thing. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't process disappointment or you don't get frustrated. It's just that you're able to move through it much more effectively without thinking like any one thing is the be all end all that just like takes away not just your day, but your week, your month, all of those things. And we've seen that happen a lot of times. And I have a lot of empathy for people. We're all going through a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's not like a thing like from a place of judgment, it's absolute non-judgment. And it's also like, hey, how can we help each other? But also, how can we get systems in place that support us to get back on track when things don't go as planned?
Hearing this, it's like very much akin to the advice I have read and have heard about folks who've like neurodivergence. This is all very
Absolutely.
helpful to them and helpful to everybody else who's not
Right.
neurodivergent. Because to your point, life is a lot. And
Hmm.
just today, as we're recording today, I had 3 appointments, all of which, something came up for that person, whether
Hmm.
it was like they forgot, they overslept, or they got the date wrong and, they had a tech issue. It was like we felt like Mercury was in retrograde. But no, I think Mercury's in retrograde every day. And
Yeah.
and I was thinking like, what did I do when I got those shifts in my schedule? And
Hmm.
I think I took them as opportunities to kind of like
Hmm.
reset and
Hmm.
get a coffee or,
Hmm.
you know, just catch up on stuff and not get too overwhelmed and swept up by it.
And
How'd I
if you're
do?
yeah, you did great. But like if you're neurodiverse, it can also feel like a rejection every time someone
Yeah.
cancels on you last
Yeah.
minute. And there is that rejection sensitivity. So figuring out how you can regroup, reframe, and
Yeah.
get yourself the support you need, that it's not about you when something like that happens, even though it's disappointing or like it's reshuffled things. And feeling like no one thing is the be all end all. And
So,
and that's the way to look at it. You got a coffee, you looked at it as an opportunity, right?
yeah, yeah, it's an opportunity and life happens. And also to
Yeah.
have empathy because how many times have I been there where I thought the meeting was at noon, but it was really 11:30, and you
Yeah.
just can't go back in time, and you just got to apologize and be
Right.
honest about it. How can parents set their kids up for success in this area while they're in high school? Just
Hmm.
even just this one aspect of being
Hmm.
emotionally okay with rejection or accidents
Hmm.
in your schedule or people not kind of doing what you thought they were going to do, and it
Hmm.
affects you because you can't
Yeah.
control life.
No, I think that we need to help kids be comfortable with things not going as planned a little bit more. So, not always, right? Like, we don't want everything to not go as planned, but when things don't go as planned, ask open ended questions. What was the most disappointing part about this? What is something that can help you move forward? What is something that you're looking forward to? Right. It
Yeah.
allows them to verbalize what was disappointing. Well, this person didn't call me back, or these plans that we made, I was really looking forward to them. And that's okay. But when you verbalize them, it allows you to process them, right? What are you disappointed about? What do you need to help me move you forward? You know what? I would just like you to sit with me, or I'd like to just like veg out and watch a movie. Like, imagine that kid who Friday night thought they had plans and then they get canceled on, something like
Right.
that, right?
Right.
So then what would help you move forward? And then, you know, all of the things help them think about, what's important to you right now. Because the way that we can model it is also to not get more stressed out or more excited than them, and really just help them work through rather than try and solve and fix, because we can't solve and fix. We can help ask open-ended questions so that they can start feeling some sense of agency and competence, but experiencing disappointment is a part of life. And, one of the articles recently in the Wall Street Journal was about sort of the helicopter parent that now takes over the job search
Ooh.
and talks to the employer about conditions of the employment place. I mean, can you imagine when we first started out that our parents would call? My parents had nothing to do with anything. My parents didn't even know what kind of company I was working at, basically. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so they're becoming overly, and because it's like they're trying to shield from disappointment. And I think when I come from a place of empathy, it's like, let's think about all the challenges and uncertainty that's coming in the information overload of the news today, and how parents are just like, well, can I just take care of this one thing for you? Right? Can I
Yeah.
just make this one thing easier? Can I make your job search easier and go to the job fair?
Oh my gosh. I'm laughing a little bit because when you're talking about, the Friday night plans getting
Hmm.
um, upended when you're 16, that's, not great. But I'm like, wait till you're 46. It's the best because I don't ever want to
Oh,
get
you're
it
not
up.
available? Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Oh no. I was just about to get on, into the
Out of
shower.
my pajamas.
No. Which brings us to the next pillar,
Yeah.
connections. They are important, but
Yeah.
you say that we've sort of been trained to go about connecting with people in not the most human or productive way. Um, you know, Networking advice. I'm using air quotes. I remember one of the best pieces of advice you gave, I think it was you,
Hmm.
was saying like kids need, and adults too, we
Yeah.
need friend groups and connections uh, in different shapes and
Yeah.
sizes.
Yeah.
Putting all your relationship
Hmm.
uh, kind of like, what do you call it? All the
In
relationship
one place, like if
in one
you're,
place.
yeah,
Right.
it can be very isolating if something doesn't go as planned.
Yeah.
So there's two things. And I think this is really important for parents as well, because a lot of times as you have kids, your friend group tends to be within your children's like school or social circle, or that might be one of your friend groups, right? And then you might have your college friends, or you might have your work friends, or you might have all these other things. But the thing about it is that making sure that you have people, and this seems very simple. And if you have these people in your life, you're like, oh my God, that's so self-explanatory. But you have people that if something really great happens to you, like you win the lotto, like that level of great, right? You would call them and they would be like, I am so excited for you. And that's all they would say. They would not be like, there would not be a twinge of like, ooh, but what about me? No, it was like, I am so excited for you right now in this moment. Good for you, right?
Hmm.
We need those supporters in our life. And I think we don't help kids understand that that's the friends we're looking for. The
Yeah.
ones that get excited when good things happen to us. Because I think so much back to the Getting In Is Not Enough book is that when we have this underlying hyper competitiveness about college, it creates this, frenemy type situation
Mm-hmm.
where this person getting in means I don't get in or I have less of a chance of getting in. It's like the scarcity mentality that kids are trained in, and it makes the friendships transactional because, oh, well, if that person gets this, then I can't, or whatever. And so, and that leads to a lot of the loneliness that I see
Yeah.
with young adults. Like, we know that young adults are among the loneliest generation. And I think part of it is you go back to this idea of how were they trained in middle school and high school around grades, around being smart, around, quote unquote, being smart and getting those grades, and how are people identified by their AP classes and all those things. And that just creates that transaction. So versus like, hey, I'm really, like something great happened. You were whatever, a goal that you wanted was achieved. And again, who are the people that are excited for you? Adults and your peer group, right? And
Yeah.
that's how we want to really help kids reframe friendships and how they
Any
are a friend, by the way, to others as well.
Yes, yes. And for the adults in the room, I think it's a natural process in life where as the older you get, I hear this from a lot of women in particular, your friend group shrinks. And that may
Mhm.
seem like you're getting less social or more isolated, but actually, how would you interpret that? I think that might be a positive.
Well, I think as long as you're feeling like those are authentic people you can
Yes.
count on, that's great. I also think people need to be open constantly to new friendships. I mean, I think and new relationships because there is a warmth of discovery that you don't have to put yourself out there constantly, and we all have limited time and energy. But this idea of like I have fully formed friendships by 40 and like I'm not going to make new friends,
Yeah.
I think that's also really limiting. I think to be really clear, I have amazing people I know in their 70s that I talk to regularly in their 60s. And I have amazing people I know in their 20s and 30s that I talk to that I get so much value from
Hmm.
those. And by value, I mean like I enjoy their time. I find it humorous. I find joy in our time together. And we shouldn't lose sight of that.
I have some amazing friends who are 10, 20 years older than
Yeah.
me. And I don't know what it is about why I became friends with them. I think I credit them for wanting to be friends with me, like maybe I wasn't seeking, a friend that was
Mhm.
my mother's age, but they, credit to them. They had the patience to be my friend because, I feel like they're more grounded, like
Well,
a lot more
they've also like
perspective.
perspective. Yeah, like that
Yeah.
brings us to the perspective piece of right expanding that there's no one way. And I think as people get older and they see life happen, they're like, yeah, there's no one way to be successful, or what we thought of as a success in our 20s might
Yeah.
not be what we want anymore.
So speaking now to the person who is trying to make a career shift,
Hmm.
they see what's happening with AI. There's a rumble of
Hmm.
fear there. They've applied to a
Hmm.
lot of jobs. They're not hearing back. So there's that sense of rejection. How do
Mm.
they maintain perspective and stay calm in all of this?
I'm not going to say it's easy, especially given if you have like family obligations,
Yeah,
financial
bills.
obligations, bills. We got bills to pay. I also would hope that people are get a little bit more like expand the notion of what they are willing to do in terms of, like different careers, try different things out. I know one person that I know, just left advertising and it really has always been interested in financial advising. So is, joining a team where he's taking the Series 7 and 63 and doing all of that stuff, which is a lot of work to get certified to be and go through that financial planning piece. And I think that, being open to what are the things that actually interest you in this moment is important. I mean, I talk a lot sometimes about my mom, who, when she was in her early 50s, she became a real estate agent and from tech, and she loved it. She was always into real estate. That was her true love. I've told it on the podcast before. We used to go to open houses all over on a Sunday, like as a hobby. And she has helped so many families find a home over the last 20 plus years, and she's still really active. I mean, like, I think that to me is the greatest example of being open. And yeah, you're going to have to start at a different level. Like, that's the other thing, like openness and expansion and perspective. You have to probably start at a different level than where you're at right now. And not feeling shame around that, being okay with being a beginner or a near beginner or an advanced beginner. And I think that's real good modeling for the kids in your life, whether they or the younger people in your life, that you are able to do that and adapt and, learn and be excited about something new.
Although you're hearing so many kids going back and living at home after college,
Hmm.
no,
Yeah.
not it was not maybe their first choice or their fifth choice to do that, but here they are. A lot of this is, of course, driven by the economy. And how does that 22-year-old keep perspective, right? How do they not define themselves
Yeah.
by this circumstance of, like, I guess it's not meeting their expectations, and how do they how do they work
Well,
through that?
it's all about choices. So it's so funny that I have actually talked to my neighbor whose 23-year-old is working in AI for a company. He leaves um at like 6:30 in the morning. He comes home at 7 o'clock at night. It took him about a year after graduation to find a job, right, in San Francisco, where I've lived for a number of years. And at first he was like, I'm dying to like find an apartment. And I was like, really? I mean, the apartments are really expensive and your location is great and your parents have a great situation, whatever. And I just saw him last week and I was walking my dogs and I ran into him and he's like, yeah, and he's accepted it. Not because like he doesn't look at it as a failing, right? He looks at it as a choice and he can save money, but it comes with trade-offs because you live with your parents, right? And so you truly are living with your parents. Or you can think about, really paying in the where he's, living and working is really high rent, probably with
Yeah.
multiple roommates where you're barely there. He's like, I know when he gets, when he's leaving for work in the morning because I see him when I'm walking my dogs. So I am like, he's taken the trade-offs and he's given a pragmatic thing that takes away any of the, shame and concern. And I have to say, because you and I are around, we graduated college around the same time. I feel like this generation does not think the way we did around living at home because I have
Hmm.
talked to multiple friends my age who were like, oh, absolutely not. That would have been out of the question. Versus you talk to young people today, they're like, well, actually, it's a good option given depending on where you live, right? Depending on where you
Yeah.
live and what your situation is. Like if you're living in a high cost of living sitting and you have a family situation, it may make sense and you're working long hours. To me, it may make sense, and then save up for something else
I
longer
mean, there
term.
is such an opportunity in staying home. It's maybe not the lifestyle that you envisioned for yourself, but financially, you can make some real leaps in those years of staying home. The rent that you're not paying, investing that, or just saving that. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh,
As long as you do that, right? And then what other
yes,
thing happen is the lifestyle creep of like the
yes.
travel or like I'm gonna quit my job for a year and go travel the world, which is great if people can do that, but like and that's their choice. But also look at what your long-term goals are and what the trade-offs are and what all of those things are and about making choices. Again, I think that the minute you realize that you have choices and you're actively making a choice, whether that is to live with your parents after college and save money, whether it is to rent a place in another city, whether it is to whatever it is, you do have choices. And that reduces the stress and it takes away the shame that you or guilt that you might feel somewhere else. And this is true
Hmm.
for adults, like, adults that are in middle age or retirement years as well. Choices.
Choices and then acceptance. Your fourth pillar,
Hmm.
we tend to use a lot of external markers to source our sense of self-worth, title,
Right.
salary, our institutional affiliation. I think with kids, teens, it's like where you go to college feels like, a rubber, like you're just stamped that school and whatever comes with it. And I know kids have such anxiety about that because, maybe it wasn't their dream school, maybe it wasn't their first choice, and now they feel kind of cornered into that persona of like, oh, you're the kid that goes to
I
XYZ
actually
school.
think I actually think parents struggle with this even more than kids do. I
Oh,
have
the
seen this in
parents
the
of the
last.
teens, you say,
Yeah.
yeah? Mm,
So there's a couple things that happen.
yeah.
One where parents are like, where my kid goes to school is a, is a reflection on my own parenting. Was I a good parent? Did they get into a good school? That's one. Second is when a kid doesn't get into whatever school, I will say so many times the kid has moved on and the parent needs coaching and counseling
Oh,
about the thing. Like the kid is like, okay, well, these are my choices. So these schools wanted me and I want to go here. And the parent is stuck back here and they actually need, and that to me is the thing that we as adults never got a lot of the emotional regulation and the coaching and the moving forward, all the things that I talk about in the book that we are now helping kids see, which makes them process disappointment more effectively. And we as adults have a little bit of work to do sometimes. Like
wow.
yesterday, I was dealing with a parent who didn't get the fall time slot they wanted. And, it was because they filled out the form wrong. And,
Fall
it
time
was
slot meaning what?
well, students who work with us have a time slot, and so fall scheduling ends up being a game of
Oh,
Tetris,
at
right?
your
Like
firm.
at our
Okay.
company, at our Green Ivy. So it's a game of Tetris. We do it every year. We have a whole form. We have a form. People start filling it out in May. Like it's a whole thing. And if you don't like, we do everything to make it so simplified. Like this isn't our first rodeo. It's year 25, people, but the reaction that the person had to not getting this one time slot was not, did not match the actual situation. Because honestly, I was like, oh, you have these choices. Actually, we can help you figure out you can get this time slot, but it might not be this. But you know what I mean? So there were options. And I felt like I was navigating a level of disappointment with an adult that with a child would have been, or a teenager would have been easier to move
Yeah.
forward with, if that makes sense. So
Oh,
that's what
yeah.
I see a lot of if like, and I like to think that everybody has things that they're dealing with behind the scenes that may make the presenting problem not the actual problem.
Is this a high functioning Silicon Valley parent problem, though, mostly? Or you would say this is like every average parent in America today?
I think every parent in America today is dealing with their own set of circumstances, whether they're caregiving for their parents, whether they're navigating, personal health issues, whether they're navigating job issues, woes, all of these things. We're all dealing with stuff. And so how we react to things and how we process is a result of the pillars that I talk about, right? Do we have systems in place to reduce the emotional load? Do we have connections that help us navigate a disappointment or distress, right? Like, and bring joy to our lives? Do we have an expanded perspective that, like, yeah, this one time slot, there's 4 other options that could work here, and the person is helping me find a solution? And do we have an acceptance for ourselves and others, right? That we're moving through, hey, I made a mistake. That's okay. Nobody's sitting in it. Let's just move forward.
Hmm. We haven't really spent much time on the AI piece of all of this. And
Yeah.
from where you sit, what is the most important message you want to give both young adults and also midlifers around this AI reality that we're living in today?
Well, I think so much of the technology over the years has brought us some fear, right? Anything we've talked about over the years has this level of fear built in, like everything's going to go away, nothing is going to exist. And I think one of the things is to really step back and double down on the human side of relationships and connection. Because at the end of the day, and you have an amazing local podcast,
Hmm.
that those in-person connections, that walking down the street, that being with people is what still makes all the difference. And so in the age of AI, actually the executive functioning skills are going to be all the more important. How are you emotionally regulating? How are you able to be flexible when things don't go as planned? How are you able to connect with others across differences, right? And then also thinking about how we can help people really fit in their life in a way that's meaningful, and then figure out where they're using AI or technology in a way that's supportive of their life, right? And not taking away from critical thinking or not taking away from, you know, all of the things that make us human. And yet there are things that can be helpful. I mean, there are so many parts of AI that have already existed and have made things helpful. For example, voice to text. I've worked with students who are dyslexic for years. And when we first worked together, they would have to drive down to the Reading Center for the Blind and Dyslexic. They would have to check out a tape and they would have to put it in a cassette recorder to listen to a textbook that somebody else had read into a microphone. Now, so much of this is available for download at the touch of your fingertips. You can now say something into text and then or record it, and then it organizes all your notes for you.
Mhm.
These are things for people with learning differences that are a life changer, a game changer.
Yeah.
And so there are so many things that are tools that are helpful, that I also don't want us to lose sight of. All of these things are good or bad in this like um very black and white moment. And I
Uh-huh.
think that that is very true for a lot of things where people are like, this is all good or all bad. There's no in between. And I think of it more as a nuanced question. I do think younger students should avoid using it, especially as they're building critical thinking and writing skills,
Yes.
because the writing is important. And AI makes these mistakes, and AI doesn't understand nuance. And you do need to read through things and all these things. So it can get through the first step, but the expertise is going to get you through steps 2, 3, and 4.
And touching, sticking with AI for a second here, and maybe this will be our last question for
Mhm.
the woman in transition who's in midlife, who's applying for jobs, and so much
Mhm.
of the job application process is automated, it is AI driven. You had an example, the former editor at Elle, 52 years old,
Mm,
recently posted about, I think, what spent 16 months job hunting,
yeah.
150 applications, and no luck. What does a story like that signal to you in terms of like how we can, with this AI stuff, kind of circumvent it or, try to make the best of it so we can get the job?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things going on, and I don't want to pass any judgment, because what a stressful position to be in.
Yeah.
And I'm glad she named it and she talked about it. It went viral on Instagram. She's 52. She's applied to all these jobs, and she has not landed something. And she had really high powered roles. I think that's the challenge. As you get higher and higher up, there's fewer roles. And this idea of figuring out how to expand your perspective of how you're hiring and what types of jobs you're hiring. And then is there a way that you can, both of us have run our own small things or big things, right? Like small big things, if that makes sense. Like we've created our own things. I think we need to talk about those things sooner with women and with people in general. That what is the other thing that you can do, or things that you can do that might support you as well. I don't have the answers and not everyone is, by the way, meant to run a business. Like running a business is its own special animal. There are plenty of people who are like, that's not my thing. But there are ways to have that entrepreneurial spirit to build your own blueprint. So if you're applying for all these jobs and it's not working out, maybe figuring out how to change how you're applying or how you're letting people know or how you're engaging with the job process. Because I think one of the things I've found in the hiring side is that a lot of people just sometimes they'll just like apply to jobs. And I'm not talking about this woman at all, but they'll just apply to jobs thinking that, oh, it's so easy. I'm just going to do one click. But one click is a lot of people doing that, right?
Yeah.
So what are the different ways that you can expand and get creative around it? I mean, you know this around the work that you do.
And this has been true before AI, right?
100%.
Like
It's
just
just even more
applying.
true now.
It's more true now. It's almost like with going back to college when they created that general application, like college applications skyrocketed, And so, gosh, that was a
The Common
mistake.
App, the
The
Common App
Common
has
App, the
now
Common App.
become even
God,
more than you and I, when you and I applied, that they're now taking
it's
away some
crazy.
supplement questions. So yes, applications are skyrocketing. Same kind of message is, how do you differentiate? Like, how do you, and I don't pretend to have all the answers here, but I also know when I talk to most people about how they've landed their job, most of the time it comes from a friend of a friend or a connection passing on or flagging at the company or all of these things. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I am saying that it is happening more than others, more often than we realize. And that is that human connection of who is that, what is that ability for us to make that human connection, maintain that human connection, have non-transactional relationships, so that when we are, asking for, you know, who knows what, and who knows who, everybody is like, how can I be helpful? And then on the receiving side, if you're a person that is able to give,
Yeah.
Give, because you don't know. Like, it's not a tit for tat, like, oh, I
It's
didn't
not
get
a
anything
zero
back for
sum
this.
game. It's not a
No,
zero sum game. The world is
no.
abundant. If
Yeah,
you
but
if you
also,
if
and
you
also, like, it doesn't. I once remember that somebody was like, I don't want to introduce anyone to my network because I think that if it doesn't go well, it's a reflection on me. And I was like, I think you need to like lower the bar here a little bit. Because you do want to have discretion, right? Absolutely. But you also want to give opportunities to people so, you can frame things in a different way to the person that you're making the introduction with.
Yeah. One of the first money philosophies I think that was ever stated on this show, I think it was David Bach. I was like, what's your money philosophy? He goes, be a go giver, not a go getter. Be a go giver. And I don't think he was quoting himself. He was quoting another,
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
never forgot that. It's so true. And because you get what you give. And I
Well,
guess,
shout out to David Bach because I
yeah,
read Smart Women Finish Rich when I was 22, 23 years old. And that totally changed my framework. And the idea of the entrepreneurial life, being able to create your own blueprint, is all the more ready when you have the financial pieces behind you, which is why I think like so many in the conversations you have are so important.
yeah. All right. Ana Homayoun, thank you so much. I'm so glad your book is getting a refresh and so, so relevant. It was relevant then. It's so relevant now. And I love that we were able to bridge it from young adults to midlife and everyone in between. Everyone check out Getting In Is Not Enough, the new blueprint for student success beyond grades and college admissions. Thanks so much.